To begin, we'll go through a roll call, starting at that end.
Jason Thielen, present.
Troy Stout, present.
Jessica Smear, present.
Lon Lot, present.
I believe, I know that Carla is out of town. Have we heard from Greg? There's Greg now. Rush to the mic, Greg, and count yourself here.
Greg Gordon, present.
Thank you.
She's here
For
too.
that update. I'd like to welcome our city staff, Austin Roy and Bonnie Cooper. And online, Shane Sorensen is joining us. So Shane will be taking up quite a bit of our time tonight to discuss the budget as we move through that process. I'd like to ask Greg Gordon to offer a prayer.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are grateful to bow our heads before thee and thank thee for the many blessings and freedoms and joys that we are blessed with from thy loving hand. We thank thee for the blessings of democracy and the opportunity to serve. We thank thee for the good people in this city and all who serve it and contribute in many ways. We pray for thy spirit to be with us, to guide us, to be wise and helpful and to do things that would be pleasing unto thee. We so thank thee for so many blessings and ask a blessing on all of those who may be in need at this time. And do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you, Greg. And I've asked Jason Thielen, Councilmember Jason Thielen, to lead us in the pledge.
Please stand and face the flag. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a few items on our consent calendar. Are there any questions on the consent calendar or points of discussion?
Mayor, I did want to make mention that item E is not actually ready yet, so just scratch that off the consent calendar. That would be the water line improvements, partial payment.
Okay. So a motion would include omitting item E.
I have a question on the well modifications. Shane, could you fill us in on that one?
Yeah, so, and let me just apologize. I normally would not wear a hat at city council meeting, but everything was off schedule today and I just barely 2 minutes ago got in here. So I apologize. So this item, I think we told the council that we wanted to do a kind of a connection to our pressure irrigation system from the Silverleaf well. It's currently connected to our culinary system. But if we have a well go down and just looking ahead to this summer, we wanted to make it so that we could switch that over and have another source available, because normally this well just sits there idle. It's just a backup source or a source that would be used when the capacity of the spring is exceeded. So this is the modification to the building. So there's some piping involved and coming through the wall and everything from the inside to the outside of the building. And then there will be a second component that will run a pipe from the Silverleaf well to Silver Lane, the line in Silver Lane. So it's kind of tough to get contractors right now. And so we discussed this amongst our staff and with our consultant and decided the best way to handle this would be to do a change order to the contract we have with Corio Construction on the CUP filter building. And so that's what's proposed here. Everything seemed to be in order. Everything is high right now, but we went over this close and we feel like for the time we have right now that this is a good bid. So that's the description of what's going on there.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the consent calendar? We'll entertain a motion.
Thanks. Add one thing, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Just if you would, Bonnie, on,
You're not on.
Mic on.
on the glass recycling, page 3. Can you add at the very end of that, I mentioned, made a comment of, again, I appreciate Greg's work on it, but I couldn't vote for it because the location wasn't determined. That's the only thing I just noticed wasn't in there.
Near the school.
Yep.
Can I add one, just FYI, so we met with the glass recycling people this week and circled back with the principal and agreed on a location. So
Okay. And is on the school grounds?
on the school grounds,
Okay.
yeah. And I suppose anything could change in the future, but yeah. So thought we'd try it there for at least 6 months and.
Good.
hopefully it goes.
I think that's great to have it there.
Okay, I made changes to the minutes as well.
Have those been submitted to Bonnie already?
Yes, okay, and submitted to Bonnie. I'll make a motion, Mayor,
Yes, please.
that we approve the consent calendar with the adjustment to the minutes that Jason Thielen has made, as well as what I have submitted. And that we scratch item E as listed on the consent calendar, and motion that we accept everything else as proposed.
Thank you, Lon. We have a motion by Lon Lott. We have a second to that motion.
I'll second.
Second by Jessica Smuin. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Shane, do we have any reports and presentations today, other than the budget we'll address later?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. So let's move right into our action item. Oh, sorry, no, we're gonna hit public comment first. So we have some time up front for public comment. Looks like a few of you may be here to take advantage of that, which is great. It's good to see people back in the building and willing to express their thoughts. So I will encourage you to come up and introduce yourself by name and address, please, just as a matter of public record, so that your comments can be submitted into our minutes and the source of that will be accurate. We'd ask you to take no more than 3 minutes to make your comments. Austin, can you run the timer, please?
Yes, I assume you'll let me know. My name is Michelle Smith. I live at 1365 Box Elder Drive. I'm here because we get a lot of helicopters, really loud helicopters, riding right past my house. And it sounds like this. Okay.
Can you get that on the record? Did you get that, Bonnie?
How are you gonna write that one down?
We get that several times a day. Sounds exactly like a helicopter about 100 feet from my house. It's the engine brakes of huge semi trucks full of dirt that are filling up somewhere in Box Elder South. And it's a problem. I spoke with Austin a few days ago, and stems from the whole Moyle Drive dilemma. It's not fair that that Moyle Drive connection to Box Elder South is not a viable road. It's not fair. It inconveniences many more people than are benefited along Moyle Drive. And that Moyle Drive has had that crossroad in its plans for probably 50 years until you guys voted to close that off. The thing is Box Elder, the road that I live on, it's very, very steep. Okay, if Moyle Drive was allowed to be open to Box Elder South, those engine brakes wouldn't have to go on because they wouldn't have to go from where they are, back up east, up a super steep road, back up north, then back down west on a super steep road, across the river, down Grove Drive, and finally get to the place where they would have been if Moyle Drive was open. And so it creates a lot of problems. And maybe I need to remind you guys that we live in a corner. We've had 2 fires since we've lived in that house. And one of them we had to be evacuated. One of them we almost had to be evacuated. And it's scary to think that there's only one true road out of town from where I live. And so that's my point. It's just not fair. And I know the bikers, we bike too. We live near bike trails. They're better up by where we live than where they are from Box Elder South to Moyle Drive. The bikers can handle it. And I submit that the 50 or so bikers who came that one time, most of them didn't live in the city and they were all organized by one person. So that should have been one vote. The problem, the reason I didn't come is because I didn't want to cause contention in my ward. Jessica's in my ward. She asked me to fight for it, for that road to be closed. I'm like, no. And somebody else from that ward asked me too. So I didn't want to cause contention, but it has become a real problem. So I would ask that you reconsider that. We also have, because it's such a steep hill, in the winter time, it's very, very dangerous. We get all these cars trying to come up, 2-wheel drive, they're spinning right in front of my house because the road steepens right there. They're spinning and then they fall down the road. Okay. If they had another way to get to where they were going, it would be safer. Because what happens is they're sliding down the road, other people are trying to move up, and it causes, there have been major problems. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a point of clarification, sorry, my voice is going tonight. The road is viable during an emergency. Just so you know, that is an emergency access road. In today's definition, in case of emergency vehicles can access it, so can evacuating citizens. It is a road that is viable for that purpose. And you're correct, it isn't open to regular traffic. We have closed it down. There are a number of reasons for that.
Yeah, it's because you like biking. So does Jessica.
Yeah, it's
a personal.
Okay, I'd ask you not to argue from the group. You had your chance to make public comment. We support recreation in the city. It's not just biking, it's also horses, joggers, hikers. And it's also a public park that has a dirt road through it. Okay, thank you.
Up our street
Ma'am?
every day, all day long. Those shouldn't be protected?
I'll have order in the meeting, please. Is there anyone else who would like to come up?
We can read,
Just the
we
truth.
might want to read the thing. You might want to hear.
All right, good evening.
Hi.
My name is Jim Anderson, live at 834 Healy Boulevard. What I want to talk about just for a few minutes is there's a development that's being proposed over in the Healy Park, the northeast corner, which is a series of, I think, pickleball courts and some playground stuff. And we live on the south side of that, along with a lot of other neighbors and stuff. And I know you guys, I think, as a council, did some voting on this last November in a virtual meeting. And we were unaware of that. And so now that, I'm not sure what the status is, but we're very concerned about this going forward. We have enough traffic in that area because of the soccer. I mean, we've got soccer fields, like 4 soccer fields, 2 across from us and then at the end of the street off High Bench. And traffic is a huge problem. And this would just invite more. As we've talked about to other neighbors around us, without exception so far, everybody is very concerned about it. So you've got a lot of people that you're probably going to hear a lot more from. It's kind of interesting to me because 5 or 6 years ago, I came before the appeals council and we were doing a renovation to our home. And I needed to do a variance to our offset to our backyard because we were extending our patio out and building a sunroom. And I needed to, instead of a 30-foot offset, we wanted to do a 25. Anyway, we went through the whole variance process, and part of that, which is very interesting to me, in order to get that variance, we had to go to all of our neighbors, as per the code, within 300-400 feet of our home. So we went down the street 3 houses, down this street 3 houses, and across the street in order to achieve that and make sure everybody was in compliance and agreed to that. That is an important aspect, and I appreciate that because we don't want to do something that would impinge or impede them in any way on their property or what they're trying to enjoy from their property. And I just feel the same concern when something's going up like this and it affects all the neighbors, that, you know, putting a notice out there, it's fine, I understand that, but it should go a little extra, another extra mile there and go and then talk to the neighbors and, you know, give them a specific message. Hey, you've done a great job when you do other things that are bigger, like Lambert Park and stuff. You make sure everybody's aware, oh, we need your input. But this one seemed not so much. And I know we and the others in that area feel, hey, you know, we're this is going to certainly impact us big time. You know, and we've already had a very bad neighbor, that's the gravel pit, for many, many years. And we've had enough noise and dust and all that. We don't, you know, in the soccer, okay, we kind of dealt with that. We're not happy with that necessarily. But we need some, we just like to have that park as per the original plan, which was to have a green park and to have a place that the children could go and, you know, have some peace, quiet, reflective time. And it seems like that's being taken away from us. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much for those comments. Just to bring you up to speed a little bit, you bring up a point that I think is very valid. We have processes that are outlined in our systems, in our obligations to the public, and we fulfilled those. But I'm in agreement with you that we should be going above and beyond those requirements when it's going to impact people in the immediate area. And so we are going to look at that. And I apologize that you feel in your neighborhood that that was not done. I think it's perfectly reasonable that we would do that. And so I have had some conversation with staff about that. We'll have more conversations about it to make sure that in the future, if we did decide on a project, I think the council will agree with me, that we do give people adequate notice so that they can provide feedback. It may or may not change the outcome, right? I mean, but everybody should have the opportunity to be heard and understand clearly what's going to happen. I will say, this will sound like an excuse. You alluded to it a minute ago in your comments that this was done in an electronic meeting, an electronic broadcast during COVID. That was a challenging time for all of us. You know, it was new territory because we do like to keep people informed, and we feel like, you know, we do when we broadcast it or when we put it in the usual places of notice. But the reality is nobody, I don't think, was communicating really effectively throughout COVID. It was a difficult time. And so, you know, hopefully we're done going through that and we can get back to normal, but normal should also involve notification if it's going to impact your neighborhood directly. And in fairness to our staff, that notification was provided to the extent that it's required, but we should probably hold ourselves to a higher standard. So thank you for those comments.
And I would just add one thing also, you brought up Lambert Park, and just know that sometimes people like the lady who was just here feel like we only focus on one thing, but in Lambert Park, they, just recently we decided we needed to put a parking lot on the southwest side of it. And that went behind homes that didn't have a parking lot or a road behind them, and they were frustrated with it. But we had to make a decision as a city council that was needed in the best interest of the city. And so we do stuff like that. And so for Lambert, they weren't happy about it, but it made sense at the time for the city and for the citizens. So
Yeah.
I would say the same thing is through Creekside Park. When we first brought that in, everyone around there did not want the park for a number of reasons. Everything from, we used to snowmobile in it when we were kids, to I don't want the traffic and people there. But the park went in, people use it, and it's been a gem for our city.
Now resale value is higher. around the
Yeah,
park.
so we just have to understand that we have these things, but we have had these conversations with all the residents before and had to make some tough decisions for the betterment of the city. But I agree with what you're saying, that let's have the discussion.
Yeah, let's go a little bit further and because we do want public feedback, we do. And like I said a minute ago, it doesn't necessarily, it won't always change the outcome, but all things should be considered. And in fairness, we should be discussing all of those points. A couple of other comments, and I think Lonnie, you might have something to say too. I think we do have a few more things to talk about on those courts to determine, what the best direction would be. I know we do have a plan, and I respect the fact that Shane has taken time to create that plan, but I think we need to reevaluate, lighting, for example, other things that may be more obtrusive to the neighborhood that we can maybe take a closer look at. And how those are constructed and exactly where. So I think it'll be a longer discussion. And so just to give you some peace of mind, we're not quite, I think, where we need to be to make that final. Thank you.
Mayor, can I just
Yes, sir.
make one quick point on that too?
Yes, please.
Jason mentioned the parking lot at Lambert Park. We went through the exact same process on that. We held a public hearing, noticed it the same way. And we've done that on other projects in Lambert Park as well. So we just, when something comes up, we've followed our ordinance and like the mayor said, we're going to take a look at that and I would imagine some changes will be made to it, but just where the gentleman mentioned Lambert Park and things are done different, we followed the same process there.
Yeah. I think everybody in this room really wants transparency. Occasionally, we may lose track of what is required to have full transparency in the minds of the people looking. We're doing everything with the best of intent, and we may flub up once in a while, and it may look like we lack transparency when it wasn't intentional. So it's good to have people here to keep us on our toes and to bring those things up, because some things do need to be reevaluated. So thank you. Lon, did you have something?
Well, just the interesting thing we've seen already tonight. So, we're getting emails from people, not pickleball related, but tennis related. And we've heard a lot of comments from the neighbors up in Healy Park that we just should move it here. And the people from here come up and say, no, you shouldn't put it here because of this. So we've gone through a series of public hearings in the past where we get a whole crowd of both sides. The deer issue is one of the most popular ones we've had, but we do hear from a variety of sides on that. And during our decision-making process in the past, we do hear from all sides. You may not hear the same things that another part of town says, and they may not hear the same things that you do because we weren't in the same meeting. But the mayor makes some good points, and we ought to make sure that we move forward in the way he's suggested that we move forward. And then so that everyone can hear what the different perspectives are from different parts of the city. And when we finally make a decision, like a cell tower decision, and one neighborhood is madder than mad at the other neighborhood because it didn't go in the other neighborhood, I hate to see that kind of division in our community. So when we can come together in a way that will help us not feel divided, that would be my hope, that we could do that. And more transparency in a better way would probably help in that regard.
And I respect the respectfulness you have of bringing it to us too.
Yeah.
Obviously, your home, as you saw before, is your number one investment, and so we're the most passionate about it. But we're still trying to make the best decision we can based on all the circumstances. So I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, is there anyone else who'd like to stand? Hi, Ed.
Ed Bush, 1463 Box Elder Drive. Shane's not here, so I'm going to look up at the monitor because he's sitting in here. And last time I inquired about when Grove Drive was going to be opened up, and I'd like to, I don't know, if Shane did anything, but Grove Drive is now opened up and that portion is paved. So I'd like to thank him for helping getting that done.
Good. Thank you, Ed. I have a little public comment of my own, just to let the public know that, and Austin and I have gone back and forth on this week. There have been a lot of people report back to me that they couldn't use the bodily harm trail. It always sounds so worse than it really is. Bodily harm isn't that bad. But bodily harm has appeared to be closed because there's been one straggler sign that was left on there saying that it was closed. It is open. So to the public, please use the trails and enjoy them. They are open. The other thing I woke up.
So Mayor, is that all the trails up there? Or
Yeah, I don't think there's a closed trail now, is there? I think that was the last of them.
Pretty sure that was.
yeah, I was there last week and there were 2 signs for 2 of the trails.
Which ones?
Bodily harm and the
Forbidden.
forbidden. Yes,
Forbidden should be open as well.
there was a sign in the middle. Yeah, so
These trail names seem like they're designed to keep people off.
anyway.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
good to know.
Let's double check on that to make sure forbidden is
Look into
open too.
forbidden.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One thing that I woke up with this morning is I went to bed with this vision of the cuts and fills up here on the mountain. And I woke up thinking, how did we allow that to happen on the hillsides we always vow to protect? And my admonition to those who are working up there is to restore that so that it's not scars that are visible to the entire county for much longer. And so we need to have a conversation about that, Austin, and see what obligations were written into the permits and the agreements, because I know we addressed some of those issues when we were approving it. And right now it is a very ugly sight to look up at our hillsides, and it's visible from, heck, you could probably see it from Spanish Fort. And so we need to get a handle on that quickly and get that revegetated or whatever it takes. So I'd like to make sure we're looking at that, Shane and Austin, to make sure that the developer is compliant. On the other hand, side of that, the same developer has done a lot of terrific work up there to help open up the trails and enhance them. So we gotta keep that in perspective. Okay.
Can I ask
Oh,
one
yes,
comment?
Jason, sorry.
That's right. So with Michelle Smith here, I kind of got, maybe more into that than I should have, because I felt it was a little bit unfair, but the way that was approached, it didn't really give us a chance to have any talk of solutions. So Ed's here, for example.
Yeah.
Box Elder Drive has, as I'm counting here, 11 houses that go down from the point. Do you see the same thing happening right now? Is her house in a special place, which is why they're using the certain breaks?
Would you mind coming up to Ed?
I'm trying
Thank
to.
Sure, oh, great.
Drag Ed. in.
I think I hear my mother calling. Sorry. Yes, so Ed Bush again, 1463 Box Elder Drive. Michelle and her husband Greg live down the street from me, right? There is a lot of construction traffic that's going, and there are, I think of them as like air brakes. They're going almost constantly during the day as the big, it's everything from cement mixers and things that go up. So I can understand she's at the bottom of the hill, right? So she probably gets more of that kind of noise as they're coming down too in there, right? And I think her concern is that Box Elder through there is kind of a connection to many people of joggers and runners. I think that's the point she was trying to make when she left, right? that cut across from one part of Lambert Park and then cut across to the other one and whatever, and there's a lot of construction traffic. It's kind of also compounded now because there's also a parade of homes going on.
Yeah.
Right, so there's additional traffic coming, up and down that, right? I'm not the one, that was voicing this. There is a lot of traffic going on that because there's construction and that's the only way they can access,
Right.
The Lambert Park Estates, activity. There's no other way. So that's kind of, if they're gonna build there, they're gonna have to do that. I just wonder if that since that's a unincorporated area of the county, I'm wondering if the county is going to reimburse Alpine for the possible damage to the roads that all these heavy vehicles are causing, going up and down all day, 5 days a week, sometimes even on Saturdays and stuff, but.
Because my only thought there is, to her point, if we could have a dialogue versus a back and forth like that, can we put, some places they say you can't do the engine brakes. If the engine brakes are her issue, I mean, that's one part of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a little bit to the park issue where one person's frustrated. She'd be happier if it went down Moy or through Lambert, but we're going to experience worse problems potentially there because you've got a straight line versus a curved line that goes all the way down and then into houses and turns to sharp left. That doesn't make any sense from a safety perspective, but to them, it might make more sense because they're so crazy with these helicopter noises that are coming over their house. So the only thing I'm trying to bring up is maybe we look at addressing that simply as a city and saying, can we put up a sign that says no engine brakes or fine for engine brakes? Yeah. Is there something we can do there?
You're right. A lot of other cities do that.
Because they're going a lot slower there than she likes to think we're only picking, but they're going a lot slower there with that bend than they would down through Lambert.
Yeah.
But can we fix that for her? Can we help her on that?
Yeah, so I sympathize with her because you can hear the brakes and different things as those big vehicles are going down, and it is the slope, that goes down that part, is a pretty steep slope. Right?
It's not, no matter where you live, it's not fun to be near building. It's just construction.
It's kind of a
creates-
reality of construction going
Yeah.
on. I mean, there's some construction going on in the Box Elder neighborhood itself, not just even in Lambert Park, estates, the south part of there that, that trucks are coming up and down also. It's a kind of a big building time right now.
Yeah.
In there, but yeah, that might be a useful thing is to try just to curtail their use a little bit. And I know she's down at the bottom of the hill, so that's when they're really, they're coming, and they're really breaking.
Because those construction things will be done at a certain point.
That's what I was just going to point out. Yeah.
But can we help them?
How many building sites are there left? Like, I know there are a bunch under construction right now, but do we know how many lots are still available up there?
I don't know how many. I know that it's over 60 lots in total, almost 70, if I recall correctly. And so
There's a lot of homes up there.
probably,
Well, there's still probably 40 to 50
There's
home
probably a
sites that
good-
need to be built.
yeah.
Right.
So
Right
over half.
in there, right?
I wonder if, engine brakes are,
Just look.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
I don't have an official count.
I wonder if engine brakes are required, to control the truck or
Well,
if they
that's
could
just-
get by. so,
If they're
that'd be
coming
helpful.
down, they're empty, probably, which means they wouldn't need as much help.
Sure.
It's just nicer to have an engine brake than having to ride your brakes. I'm
Yeah.
a truck driver. I know that.
Right.
But they can do it without. I mean, there's plenty of trucks that don't have engine brakes. And
Just
they
gear
can do it
down.
without.
Got to gear down. But I think one of the points that she's making though, is that when they're excavating, they are hauling full loads down.
Yeah. Oh, I see
So,
what you're saying
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder if that's something, the other question I had is what are these helicopters used for? Is this search and rescue?
No,
or is this for-
she used that as a reference as to how noisy it is.
She's saying that it sounds like.
Oh,
She-
it sounds.
They're not helicopters, but it does sound
Sounds like
like
a
exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
An
gonna-
engine brake is on some trucks is very loud. Even on my pickup, I have an engine brake on my,
Ed, if you're going to come forward, I'm going to ask you to replicate that same sound. that it was
Oh,
done
yeah,
before.
Jen, please, right?
Yeah.
The other comment is that it's, again, from where, different houses are along the street. My house happens to sit up above the street. It's up on the natural grade, right? So some of that, doesn't bother me as much because I sit above the noise that's going on, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
tend to.
Yeah.
Some of the houses are more on street level, right, which is gonna have a lot more effect of like an engine brake reverberation, and things going, like that. So it's,
We get that noise bouncing off the mountain too. I mean, the guns down just a little bit further sound like they're right in the backyard.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah, they
same
do.
thing.
It's true.
That mountain range just sort of sends that echo everywhere.
Well, I was gonna say, and I hear actual helicopters sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So is that something we could do though? To show that we care?
I could speak to that of what's happened in the past, Mayor, if you'd like. So
Sorry, Shane,
probably-
go ahead.
Probably 15 plus years ago, there were some complaints about engine brake use on Canyon Crest Road on either side of the hill. At that time, somebody came in like this, and a public comment, as I recall. We asked the council how they'd like us to address it, if we wanted an ordinance prohibiting engine brakes. At that time, they said, no, we'd like to just have some signs that say, please, no engine brakes. And so I think those signs are still there today. To my knowledge, that's the only place in the city that signs like that exist. The other thing, if trucks are coming down the grade loaded and they're not allowed to use engine brakes, likely what they're going to do for that steeper section of the road is grab a lower gear, the engine revs up, and you're going to have noise from that too. So you're going to have some kind of noise. When Fort Canyon Road was at the peak of construction, there were a lot of complaints on Main Street from the same thing. There were complaints about the engines revving, and that's just what I've grown up driving trucks, and that's what they do. So I don't think there's a 100% solution here to make everyone happy, but whatever you'd like us to do, we can approach it.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense to put some signs up there where they're building now and see if we can get that. And does this council feel like they want to talk about this in the next meeting as an agenda item?
Yes, I say we talk about it.
Okay.
It's a real concern, and let's talk about it.
Okay. So Shane, let's go ahead and add that to the agenda for next time.
Okay.
Okay, before we move on, Austin, do you have a few samplings of the previous comments in the meetings that you could read for us?
Yeah, let me go ahead and cover some of that. So in our previous meeting, we had two main topics of comments that were received, and most of these came in electronically. The first being, we received a number of emails regarding support for preserving Lambert Park. So Shelley Butterfield, Diane Barber, Sherry Clark, let's see who this is, Gigi Doyle, Annette Flygar, Michelle Anderson, Suzanne Lundell, Nick Clark, and Cameron Clark all emailed in about supporting preserving Lambert Park in its current status and as a natural park for biking, hiking, that kind of a thing. So all of these emails, that should be pointed out, have all been forwarded to our council members. So they've received this public comment. We're just acknowledging it here for the record that these comments were received. In addition to those comments, we received some other comments regarding the pickleball courts at Healy Park and or Burgess Park. And so those comments we received from Peter Larkin, Dylan Wareham, Kelly and Mary Tipton, and Cecia Croft, and Peter Reschke. All of these individuals had concerns about, well, I should say not all of them. Several of them had concerns about having the pickleball courts in Healy Park, what that would do to their neighborhood, the noise that it would create, having lights shining on the courts. There were some other comments from some pickleball players who made note that Burgess Park is in need of some maintenance. So the nets are kind of getting worn out, and they feel like the surfaces are getting worn down too. And so they feel like maybe some of the funds that would be used to build those courts in Healy Park could be used to just renovate the ones at Burgess instead. So those were some of the comments that we've received. Since the last meeting, we've received a couple more comments. Again, these are also relating to pickleball courts. So these were just received this week. One from Ben Bean.
Was this forwarded, Austin?
This one has not been
Okay.
forwarded yet. So this was just received today, actually, or actually, no, not today, but last week. There's a couple others. One was received today. So this one from Ben Bean, he talked about repairing the nets, expanding the number of courts at Burgess. So he was in support of Burgess, it sounds like, is another one of those. Maureen Kirkland, and these will be forwarded to the council. They just haven't been these that I'm reading right now. Maureen Kirkland, she's lived here for 20 plus years, and she enjoys ping pong, racquetball, tennis, and many other sports. She plays primarily at Burgess Park. One of the wonderful aspects of Burgess Park is that there are four courts together, which is really nice for mingling and intermixing. And then she goes on to say that repairs are needed, and she's heard that Alpine City is willing to add more pickleball courts, and the willingness is great. But she's hoping that we will reconsider the location of Healy Park. And finally, we have a comment. This is the second comment. They commented previously, but again, they sent another comment this week. This is from Cecia Croft. They suggest that the park, that the pickleball be an agenda item in a future upcoming meeting. And they propose that the pickleball courts be located at Creekside Park. I feel like that would be an excellent location. So I believe those are all the comments we've received.
Thank you, Austin. And again, as a reminder to the public, those comments will all be in their entirety submitted to the permanent record in the meeting minutes. Okay, moving along to action item B. Shane, we do this every year, but every year I feel like we shouldn't open with a hearing. We should open with an explanation of the budget. Would you mind taking a minute to do that, and then we can move into the public hearing?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got on mute. And that's what we do is just kind of give a little presentation, hold the hearing, and then adopt the budget. So, and if for whatever reason the council wanted some additional time, if we had this on the next meeting, that would be fine too. Traditionally, we've always adopted the final budget on the first meeting of June. One issue that has came up is the certified tax rate has not been provided to us. And I emailed the state tax commission last week to verify when they would have that out, because I kept checking and it hadn't been pushed out on their website. The response I got is that they have to have it out by the 8th. Apparently that means after 6:46 on the 8th, because it's still not available. So we'll for sure have to push that to the next meeting. But we have advertised the public hearing on the budget as required by state law. And so we'll hold that, and then the council can decide what you'd like to do as far as adopting the budget. So we presented and I can go into as much detail as you would like, Mayor, but we presented the tentative budget a month ago. There have been just a few little changes since then. As I met with each council member and the mayor individually, there were some things that were requested that we have provided. Our revenues are very stable and actually are increasing. Sales tax is increasing, I think, with the online sales and how everyone is participating and buying that way, that's really increased our sales tax since the state put into place the sales tax requirement on online purchases. This budget includes it anticipates a 3% merit increase for employees, and I provided the council some other information with regards to that. Insurance went up, health insurance went up 5.4%, dental 0.5%. We've got numerous capital improvement projects to the tune of a little over $3 million that are planned. We have proposed in the budget a new pickup, a 10-wheel dump truck, and a snowplow that would be a replacement for an existing truck that's in our fleet. That snowplow is an addition since the tentative budget was presented.
And that's just the blade, correct, Shane?
Yes, yep, just the blade. So it's about $12,000. So let's see. They actually take a severe beating with everything that they do. So let's see. We'll pay off our street sweeper this year. So it's been kind of a lease to own situation. We do have included in the budget a couple of part-time positions that if they end up being necessary, we would fill those. That would be helping with HR and kind of a parks, recreation, trails, open space position that we've discussed for a while. On our solid waste, we do have an increase from ACE that has been proposed. Cost of living, it's 1.4% based on the index that's outlined in the contract, and then an increase of $4 per ton for tipping fees. This would require for us to not lose money, a rate increase. We're working on a couple of different scenarios on that and plan to have that rate increase brought back to the meeting in 2 weeks. So that actually would not go on someosomeone's until August. So we do have a little bit of time if we need extra time there. So those costs have been figured into the budget. Talked about pressurized irrigation when we presented the tentative budget. We're working with Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham on a rate study for the system. I'm hoping within the next month to bring that to the council. It's actually very complicated and has taken some extra time to put that together. Let's see.
Shane and I had a conversation earlier this week about PI and meters and coming up with a rate to start, the watermark, so to speak, for overages. And sorry to interrupt you, Shane, but I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed that, we've been massaging this and trying to come up with the right number and not treating it. I'm sorry, that's not true. We haven't been not treating it with a degree of urgency, but I think we need to treat it with a higher degree of urgency with our water situation and the drought, the way it's progressing. And so I've asked Shane let's come up with that number as quickly as possible. And we're probably going to have a midsummer assessment and have a rate change at that time, because we've got to do something to help mitigate the water consumption. It's over the top right now. People are ignoring
I've
the
seen in
requests.
some communities where they just one water day a week.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's getting pretty drastic in a lot of communities right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, the system's about.
Yours is dead right now.
Mine too. Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No problem. The system's about 20 years old, and of all of our enterprise funds, the pressurized irrigation fund and the system's the one probably I'm the most worried about, just because of growth and demand and everything, and then some of the issues that we've started to see, being 20 years into the life of the system. So there's been some costs there, some pump issues, some motor issues, and things that we've had to address. So I think it's inevitable that at some point we'll have to increase rates to keep that system viable and functioning. In that 20 years, there's only been one rate increase. So that's pretty unheard of, I believe. So we'll be addressing that in the near future. This budget also includes a 0.3% increase for police and a 1.62 increase for fire. Our members of the board, all three of them actually at different times have been able to participate in that budget, and it was adopted by Lone Peak. We mentioned before the American Rescue Plan funds. We anticipate in this budget year that we will receive some. We do not have the full details yet. They've been very slow to come out. So other changes, just in summary here, from the tentative budget to the final budget, we've adjusted how some wages are listed in each department. We added some capital improvement projects, including this the Healy filter building that's been being worked on, that's splitting budget years. The Silverleaf well pressure irrigation conversion, which part of that we discussed earlier in this meeting. And then there was some discussion about not having 3 flow trails in 3 falls. And so we added in the Lambert Park walking trail that has been discussed and was actually approved. It just hadn't been funded yet. And then again, the additional snow plow that I mentioned before. So that's pretty much the budget. Our city, in my opinion, is very healthy financially, and we'll answer any questions after the public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane. So we'll have a discussion after the public hearing is over. We will open the public hearing on the 2022 budget. Ed, do you want to come up again? Are there any online comments, Austin?
No, we haven't received any comments.
Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we will end the public hearing. All right, let's have a discussion on the budget. I lost my place on my agenda, so I think that's next. Questions?
One for me on. By the way, as I didn't turn my mic on right at first, when Planning Commission does their thing, I don't think they're turning their mic on.
Yeah.
Some of them you can not even hear them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So we need to make sure that that gets turned on.
Okay.
You can tell the ones that have the mic on. You can tell the ones that, and I don't even know if you sit clear back here, if you can still hear it or not, but you can tell it's not on.
I can hear you well, Lon.
Even if I sit back here.
Yeah, it's a lower volume, but I can still hear you.
Okay.
But Lon's got that sweet baritone voice that carries pretty well.
So anyway, back up to the budget. When we talked about the increase in the solid waste thing and not going into effect till August, I think it would be good that we get out in a July newsline or something that we're going to be seeing an increase. Let people know that there's going to be an increase in that coming before it hits.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Bonnie, can we have a little reminder for that? And to that point, Lon, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we may actually want to send something out separate of the newsletter, like right away. So we can start building that expectation for the city. So maybe let's talk later this week about getting something out, just a quick mailer out to everybody.
Let people start seeing, they've been paying a bill that's the same every month type of thing. Something also to the effect that the PI rates will be changing here soon. I don't know how we want to word that, but at least get in people's mind that there are going to be some increases in the utilities.
Lon, were you referring to the garbage rate?
Yeah, the garbage rate.
Okay.
Yes. I get questions all the time in asking when the irrigation water is going to increase, because I'm dealing with it every day anyway. And it would be good to have the public aware that it's coming. We're still working on the rate study or whatever, however you want to put it, but keep them informed. We're hearing all the time that we don't tell people what's going on. Let's get them up to speed before they're up to speed.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think there are people who are kind of anticipating it now as one method of enforcement.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting messages from people asking, why are we letting people
yeah,
get away with watering every day?
yeah. So some of them who are still just very faithful in doing what they should be doing on their days and so on and so forth are wondering, why aren't these guys doing it? So yes, Mayor, we do need to, and we have meters. Why aren't we?
Right, we have the
We're doing
equipment already in
something with
place.
So,
Yeah, I had two neighbors watering on Sunday. It was
yeah.
all I could do to
Well,
go crazy.
well, it'll make it easier, just like the fireworks thing. Enforcement's gonna be much easier if fireworks are going up over to the north of 92. If we have the meter going, then people don't have to judge whether they're doing the wrong thing or not. They just ought to know that they're gonna have to pay for it.
Yep.
And that will help for sure. Okay. Shane, you mentioned something about meeting with different council at different times and having some changes or things put in there. Were there anything significant that I'm missing that I didn't see?
So I sent the email out on Friday. So the spreadsheet that we use for all the wages, benefits, and where everything plugs back into the budget in the various different departments and sections of the budget. There were some things like the on-call time. I actually wasn't 100% sure where that went. It actually comes out of 4 different places. 2 were overtime categories and 2 were just into regular wages. And so we actually split that out, added another line for on-call time. So that
Okay,
specifically
didn't
shows in those
really
parts.
increase budget. It just sort of
No.
moved laterally somehow.
Yeah, it's just clarification on where it's
Okay.
where it's being where it's coming from, really.
Okay.
Page numbers, which were very helpful for me as
Yes.
well. It
Yeah.
took a little
Yes, for sure.
bit to figure all that out, but I got it. Let's see. There's a note in a couple places on miscellaneous services, particularly on the culinary water and pressure irrigation. We get charged, I think it's 89 cents per month for each meter to have that cell service to read those. And I just put the note in there. It's one of those things where if you get into too much detail, you get page after page of in your budget. But if anybody ever has a question of what's billed to a certain line, we can run a detailed ledger for that line item and provide it to you through our software. So the other thing was that I sent out on Friday, and it's not in this packet, is a comparison like over the last 5 years. I think I have my copy here somewhere. I think there's like 4 actuals from previous budget years, expenditures, revenues and expenditures, and then to date actual for this current budget year, the budget for the current budget year, and then the future year. And I think I explained in the email that I actually picked up on a couple things from having that report. It took a little bit of work to get that put together, but now we have it. It'll be easy to run. There's just a few anomalies in there. If you get a grant or if you have, like we had the CARES Act funds, if you compare one year to another and don't have that knowledge, it can make things look kind of wild from one year to another, kind of up and down. And the same with on the expenditures. If you do a large water line or street project or some other type of project one year and you don't the next, your expenditures can look way out of whack with other years if you're looking for, just a year-to-year comparison to see if things are just kind of slightly increasing. So it is a good report. We're happy to provide that and glad that we were able to figure out how to do it. So it does need a little bit more cleaning up with some headings and things, but I think it is a good report.
I thought that was helpful. Thanks, Shane,
That's all you have.
for that one.
Sorry, Craig, I didn't hear. what
Oh, I
you
just said thanks for the 6-year report. I thought that was, additionally insightful.
The 6 year.
Okay, so does council feel comfortable making a motion to pass the current budget as proposed, or you feel like we need to move it to another meeting?
I just had one other comment that I noticed today, looking through it, the year I noticed from about 3 years ago, traffic fines are down over 80%, maybe 85%, which I'm sure a lot of people appreciate. I did have one mother today say that her son, she has 2 sons that were, pulled over and given warnings, and she wants them to get tickets so they can learn some accountability. So, but some people say too on the parking, right? If you give them a warning, right, they're not going to change, maybe.
Yeah.
Got to stay. Greg, I had noticed that, and I talked to the chief about it a couple of months ago, and he said all you got to do is write COVID-19 next to it. That's why revenue's down so far this year too, even compared to last year.
Yeah, so that should bounce back without COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The only thing I would add, are you done, Greg?
Yeah, thank you.
And again, Shane, thank you for breaking out these salary and benefits. I've never been able to see them before, and it's actually very insightful to kind of, obviously we have on-call and that's salary, but it's on call, that adds to the end. But the whole thing has been very good for me. And the only thing I would question or add is, obviously we did a 3% merit increase. As I'm looking through this, obviously someone who's making a lot of money, 3% means a lot more to someone who's, in the 40s or 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if, and like I look through not that you ever want to just separate people out, but if I look to some of the female employees on our staff, they're lower.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if there's a way that we can maybe it doesn't have to be a flat 3% across the board, but we have some individuals that are doing so much for our city right now, but 3% is very slow versus someone who's making a lot more.
Well, and one thing to point out is we've had this discussion in years past about a 3% increase, for example. That's what we are allotting to the city as up to 3% per employee. Some may not get a full 3% if their performance isn't at the level where it would merit that. Or are you, I'm sorry, I might be speaking without checking. Are we talking about a merit increase across the board, Shane? Or are we talking about allocated based on per capita, but it can be spread out differently based on merit?
The latter that you said is correct, Mayor. We've
That's
always
okay.
had the percentage in the budget, and then I believe the way the ordinance is written, the city administrator and the mayor kind of determine how that gets allocated. So
Yeah.
So
not everybody gets
So
3%.
this one wasn't a 3% for everyone.
Well, it's allocated 3% for everyone, but somebody might get 2% and somebody else might get 4%, which is an average of 3.
Oh, but this
But
is
right.
This is showing it
Yeah.
as 3% for everyone though, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's, go ahead.
That doesn't include that. You're right.
But Shane, did I understand? I think you noted there were some adjustments for, a few, a few, maybe.
right.
Okay.
And just look at it as a pot of money, and
Yeah.
it's 3%, and then it can be distributed however. So
Not everyone is entitled to the full 3%. Some may get more,
Yeah.
and some less.
But as far as a budgetary item,
Right.
we've got to have that that
That's
bucket
the
of money.
allowance. Mhm.
And do we ever have visibility into how, I guess we don't at that level, that's more administrative with Shane, but we don't get to see,
You can see it if you
not in our
request to see it.
budget though.
Right.
It's not like itemized.
And I will tell you that normally it has been across the board, just to be straight up honest. So, but it's always, as long as I've worked for the city, it's always been talked about as a pot of money, and it could be, like we discussed, 2% here, 3 there, 4 there, whatever is determined to be the correct way to do it. So, yeah.
Okay. Did that satisfy your question?
Kind of, I mean, the question, I don't know what directive I can give Shane, but I would encourage maybe a higher percent for some of the lower people that are key to our organization. We've done it with Carolyn a bump, but obviously Shane manages that and does a good job with that, but that would be my advice.
That is one other thing that I added on to the spreadsheets that I sent to the council and mayor is, how long each employee's been at the city. And in a position, and that normally does come into play, with these things. You increase, if you're starting out brand new or something, you're not coming from another city, then you kind of work your way up through. But I understand what you're saying, Jason.
Okay, you have some sample motions in front of you.
I'll make a motion. Mayor.
Please do. Yeah.
I move to approve resolution R 2021-12, approval of the FY 2022 final budget as proposed.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Greg Gordon to accept the budget as proposed. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Jason Thielen. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question then. If we don't adopt, which we won't be adopting the certified tax rate, will we have to redo something with the budget if certified tax rate comes in different then?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think we will. I believe that I've worked back and forth with Dave on this. I think we've slightly over budgeted revenue, but it's taken care of in the budget. There's some like our transfer to the capital improvement fund would just be less if the revenue comes in less than expected, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. That's all, Mayor. I have.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jessica, do you have any questions, thoughts? Okay. Without any further input, we'll entertain a vote. All in favor of passing the 2022 budget as proposed, say aye.
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 Sorry, I apologize. I'm interrupting the vote. This needs to be a roll call vote. Let's start with Lon.
Lundlot, aye.
Jessica Smuin, aye.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We have a budget. Okay, moving on to, we're to strike item C and move on with item D, fraud risk assessment.
Okay. This is one of those items that we could have put under reports, but it's kind of, we submit at the same time as our budget. We have to upload this form to the state. So it's called the fraud risk assessment. This is the second year that we've had to fill this out. And basically what it is a self-check on if your financial system is in order to prevent fraud. So it goes through this series of 9 different questions on the one sheet, and then some additional questions on page 2. It's a point system where you get so many points for having things in place. For example, item 1, does the entity have adequate basic separation of duties or mitigating controls as outlined in the attached basic separation of duties questionnaire? And so, does the person that receives the revenue for the city, are they able to write checks? That's not the case. Those duties are separated in our city. And so we were able to answer yes. And that's a huge one. That's 200 points. So, you get into some small towns and things and they don't have a lot of employees. And so that becomes more difficult to answer yes on that question. But this is essentially the same points that we had last year with one exception. Last year, we were caught off guard on this online training that each council member is supposed to complete once in their 4-year term. We now have everyone that has completed that, and so we were able to get an additional 20 points. So last year, we were in the moderate risk category. The additional 20 points puts us into the low risk category. I did confirm with the state auditor's office. This is really just a presentation to the council. And as we do our audits, we'll be asked to just provide documentation in our minutes that this was presented to the city council. So if you'd like to discuss any of these other items in any more detail, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, our points are 330 of the 395 possible. So we'd be in the low risk category.
Can you repeat how much that saves us annually?
It really doesn't save us annually, other than from the standpoint of preventing fraud. So it saves us in that way, but it's not like an insurance thing where there's some benefit to being at a different level. But as this is uploaded to the state auditor's website, if they see someone probably in the high or very high category, I would think they'll have a little bit more of an eye on them, or maybe give them some additional training or how they can separate duties and different things like that. So it's just a good self-check to keep the council and the staff and everyone out of trouble, and that's our ultimate goal.
Okay. Thank you, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the next item, which is Cherry Point. Cherry Point, sorry. Austin?
All right, so Cherry Point. This is a small subdivision. It's a 2-lot subdivision. What you're seeing here on the screen is Plat A. So they're proposing to do the subdivision in 2 parts. Plat A and what would eventually be Plat B. So on the screen, you see Plat A. Plat A is 1 lot, 40,000 square feet. It meets all of our minimum zoning standards for the zones, such as frontage, area, width. All of those requirements are met. Background history on this lot. This will be a future lot for Pete Christensen, who actually owns used to own the home that's on the other lot here, lot 2. So lot 2, this is all used to be one piece. And so lot 2 has an existing home on it, which you can see on the left-hand side of your screen there, or what would be the west side of that property, the northwest corner. That existing home has been there for a long time. And that's where Pete Christensen has lived. He wants to build a new home for his wife on lot 1. So he's doing that. The current owner of this property is Josh James. And so he's allowing Pete Christensen to do this. They've worked out an agreement as such. A couple of key points to point out here. So with lot 1, typically we would require a curb and gutter and improvements to be installed at the time that the lot is done. However, we don't have any of that on Grove Drive at this time. And so we anticipate doing that. So what we're advising is that they put funds, that they be required to provide funds for those improvements when the city does the rest of Grove Drive there. And so that would apply to lot 1 or Plat A. However, lot 2 or Plat B, and this could potentially be developed into more than 1 lot, just so you're aware, which is the remaining 4.9 acres. And there's a couple of issues on the second phase that if you look over here, and maybe I'll turn on the annotation so you can see this. Clear the screen. Work. Okay. So over here on Grove Drive, it's actually narrower than our typical right of way. So our typical right of way is 54 feet. And over here on Grove Drive, there's a point at which it narrows down to what would be 41 feet. If the right of way were given. And so we've been working with the city attorney, with Hiram specifically, and we've kind of drafted some language that could go into a development agreement that would require improvements. Well, I'm sorry, not just improvements, but that the right of way that we need would be dedicated at the time that either lot 2 or phase or plat B is developed, or when the city goes to finish Grove Drive, that this section could be dedicated to the city, the necessary right of way that's shown here on the preliminary plan. And so we've drafted some language. You've all received a copy of that. We've emailed that out earlier today. And so that would be kind of that language would be added to a development agreement for this subdivision. Let's see if there's anything else I'm missing on this.
But could we ask for that all to be done? I mean, typically when you have a minor subdivision like this, phasing a minor subdivision, to me is a little, okay, you can do it, I guess. But if we're taking that piece right now, why not just have it be done right now? You know?
So this isn't like with other subdivisions, it's common for them to leave like a future, basically they would call it like a future development piece of land, that they say we're holding this for future development. And the issue with this one is Josh James doesn't have any plans to do anything with that for probably 10 to 20 years at a minimum. He just wants to leave it the way it is. So why would we? The point is he doesn't know what he wants to do with it. And so how can we require him to do something if he doesn't know?
To Jason's point though, doesn't that just emphasize the point, you know, that because it may never get done, we're going to hold money for an indefinite period of time.
So, well, lot 1, we would hold the money on that. That would be done. So this is 2 pieces. There's a preliminary plan, which you see on the screen before you. And then there's another part, which is the final plat, which is coming for your approval tonight. The preliminary is approved by the Planning Commission. Final is approved by the City Council. So what you're really approving tonight is lot 1. Funds will be set aside for that. So we have the funds so we can do it. That money's there, the right of way is dedicated, everything's taken care of with that final plat. When he comes forward with the final plat for the remaining, which is shown here as lot 2, that has to go through the final plat process. And at that time, that's the time when the City Council can make requirements and we make agreements. So that's the time when he would dedicate the right of way, unless we outline it here in the development agreement otherwise.
Is this coming in as a minor subdivision or not?
It is a minor subdivision, but because it deals with public right of way, it has to go through City Council for approval. Typically, minor subdivisions are approved at a staff level.
When it doesn't involve right of way.
Correct, yeah.
And then to one more point then is the funds we're collecting for the sidewalks, are they only for the sidewalk that's going to be in front of lot 1?
At this time, yes. And then when he comes forward with the second phase, it would be required to put up the funds or pay for or develop that curb and gutter and sidewalk at that time.
That just seems strange.
But
Think about it. Any subdivision you do then, you can just phase it the way you're talking about. And if I knew I could have done that, that would have been nice when I did my one little one. Hey, I don't need to actually pay the city for this sidewalk or.
So, I mean, maybe a good example would be like Whitby Woodlands. So there's a large section of that hasn't been developed, where they have horses and stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of curb, sidewalk and street that's eventually going to have to go through on that. But they haven't gone through the final plat process on that yet. So that remaining phase is still outstanding. It's been approved at a preliminary level, but it hasn't gone through the final process yet. I don't know if that helps understand.
I guess I just think about the process of renovating an old building. When you have, let's say, an older office building that isn't ADA compliant, it's okay as long as you're not going to do anything to the building. But as soon as you do something to that building, you've got to bring everything up to ADA code. And it seems like it would be, I guess that's a little bit of apples and oranges, but it's similar in with respect to the fact that you're doing something with this property now. So should it not be retrofitted to current standards if you're going to do that at the time that the change is made, the first change is made? Sorry, let me give the floor to Lon for just a moment.
So I hear what you're saying, Mayor. I hear what Austin's saying, using Whitby Woodlands as a comparison. The thing that bothers me a little here is that we're writing in that. The thing that bothers me is that we're writing in that if we choose as a city to improve that right-of-way area, then it'll be at our cost, not his cost. Whitby Woodlands, we don't have any kind of agreement with them on that. We wait until it's done and then they improve, they pay for the improvements, right? This one just has a clause in there that sounds like a wait out period, that he'll just wait it out and wait for somebody else to pay for it.
Well, also Whitby Woodlands doesn't have a current road through that
Correct.
platted area, so that's not really, I'm just wondering, what does our city code say has to happen when a minor subdivision is brought? What are we required to do? And what is the developer required to do at that time when a minor subdivision comes to us?
Yeah, so they're required to provide funding, or they're required to provide the improvements for the final plat. And so that's what they're doing here.
So walk me through this. We have just north of the Alpine Elementary on 300 North there, we have that narrowing of the road. I'm apologetic. I'm just sorry. But we have the narrowing of the road. Are we saying that those people, if they wanted to start developing that, can just parse off one lot and then they can do another lot, and conceivably they can go all the way to the end, but that narrow, they can determine when they're going to narrow that road? Or is that
So what, I mean, whatever section they're working on at that given time. So if they were working on the section of that property, let's say, are we talking about the Burgess Orchard there? Is that what you're talking about on
yeah,
300
could
North?
they do the exact same thing as we're doing here and just pull off one
So
lot and then another lot?
whatever section he's doing at any given time, he would be required to provide the improvements for that phase. But the remaining phase, if sometimes he's coming in multiple phases, that can happen. Like North Point has, I think, had like 6 phases. And so those are just preliminary plans. What's not shown here in the packet is we're showing 2 lots, but in reality, this is most likely going to be 3 or 4 lots. Okay, so in reality, we're not just saying he's just holding off 1 lot with for just so he doesn't have to do an improvements. It's going to be like 3 or 4 lots, the second phase, and at that time, you know, whatever that looks like, obviously is going to change how those improvements are done. So
Greg,
No, that's fine. Lon covered my question. Thanks.
you did, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Austin. And these are the type of adrenaline-filled conversations that give us such a large audience. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment or ask any questions, or do we want to make a motion?
One
Go ahead,
last-
Jason.
So are they giving with this on lot 2? Is that property that's there right there, is that going to happen with this development, or do we already have that road right now? You know how it veers out, and you talked about not,
we're talking about,
yeah,
The right of way on Grove Drive.
do we have
there,
the right of way on the west side of that, in the middle of that green there is that what you're talking about?
yeah, so the right of way is there. Is this going to be widened with the subdivision going in?
So it will be widened to an extent, but it will not at the end, it would not meet our standards, which is 54 feet. This would just be
Are they widening it though?
I'm sorry.
Is
Are
it
they
developed?
widening?
No, that,
No.
Austin, that's not Jason's question. Jason, your question is, will that section be improved with
Right.
lot one being developed? The answer was no. So right now, the property, Josh James's property actually goes clear over to the west side, pretty much on the west edge of the asphalt. So it's one of those situations where we have a road that's on top of someone else's property, but the road's been there for so many years that there's a prescriptive or other type use there. Back when, what happened on this is back when the rigid Alpine or that property was proposed for annexation, there was some discussion on annexing. There were some improvements outlined, one of which was to improve Grove Drive from Alpine Boulevard clear up to this 90-degree bend in Grove Drive. It was actually approved that way, but later the developer came back, made another presentation to the city council, and the council changed the requirement of that annexation agreement and did not require Grove Drive to be improved, other than the section that was improved, which shut the road down that Ed talked about earlier, Ed Bush. So back when this was all going on, because Josh James's property came clear to the west side of the road, he was approached. They were not interested at that time in, working with the city on this right of way. And so I think that was one of the reasons why the council changed. They weren't willing to condemn it. It seems like that's why the agreement changed and that requirement was taken away. So it's a little bit of a difficult situation because the existing home that's been there for years on this Josh James property, it will not even quite meet the required 30-foot setback with this reduced right of way. On the other side of the road, there's kind of a, I don't know if you'd consider it a historical building, but the Two Goat Gallery building, if everyone knows where I'm talking about there, it's very close to the road. It was annexed, that property was annexed into the city. And so we kind of inherited through annexation some of these problems. So the Two Goat Gallery accessory building would end up with, as I recall, about a 10-foot setback, and the existing home on the east side of the street would, I believe it was, be a 29-foot 4-inch setback or something very close to that. The way we work this out, typically our right-of-way width would be 54 feet through here, like what would be in a brand new street, say in the Ridge subdivision. What we worked out, and we have right-of-way issues south of here, is to use a 41-foot right-of-way, which allows us to have the same pavement width of 30 feet, curb and gutter on both sides, and sidewalk on one, in that reduced right-of-way. It's 13 feet less than our normal. So through working with Josh James and his representatives on this subdivision, it felt like this might be one way to kind of work together and eventually get Grove Drive improved. Now, eventually, I don't know if Grove Drive will have curb. If we were to put it on the north-south section of Grove Drive up to the stop sign, would it end up rounding the corner and ending on the east side of lot one, or would curb and gutter extend clear to Box Elder? Knowing what we know about the Cove, it's tough to think about. It would be very expensive actually for us, now that it's annexed into the city, to go in and install curb and gutter in all the streets in the Cove. If there was a street that goes through the Cove that would be easier to put curb and gutter on, it would be Grove Drive. And that's just something that we'll have to decide as a city and as council and mayor if that's a priority in our street system or not. So I don't know if that helps answer the questions, Jason.
I guess to some degree, I'm trusting our attorney and Austin and you guys, because if this is a 2-lot subdivision, typically that's when you can fix things that we need to have fixed. But if you're telling me that it's not what I'm thinking it is, then I have to trust Hiram on that one.
Yeah. So if what's currently shown on the screen as lot 2 was shown as lots 2, 3, 4, and 5, you know, it would look more like a development that would have more lots sometime down the road. One of them would have an existing home on it, but right now what they're trying to do is develop phase 1 of the development, which is lot 1. I can see where some of these questions come up, but say like in the Ridge subdivision, you know, their plat A, they have 70 lots over there or whatever. Plat A was like 5 lots, and then they added another 10 lots and, you know, 4, 5, 6 phases. We don't really have something in our ordinance that says that they can't phase a development. There's other things with phase developments that are requirements that we've discussed before. But probably where this is lacking and would look different is if these other future lot lines were shown on what's currently shown as lot 2.
Mayor. So back to, I think, someone's question. Will we, when we do this lot 1 thing though, will we have and sign this development agreement? Will we have the right of way on Grove Drive? Even though it won't be improved currently, will we have the right of way?
As I understand it, Lon, the right of way that's in front of the frontage of lot 1 would come with the plat. So that would be recorded and dedicated to the city. The remainder of the right of way, if the city gave 30 days notice that, hey, we're going to improve Grove Drive, we need the right of way, they would have to provide the right of way deed to us within 30 days.
Okay, so that's how I am to understand this development agreement that we would be approving, is that we will not have the right of way on any frontage on lot 2, north or west, unless we say, give them 30 days notice that we were wanting that right of way. And we would then, as a city, improve it ourselves. Is that Hiram?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my understanding, and I don't have all the details on the history of the property, but my understanding is there was some conflict, and I think Shane has explained it, between the original property owners and obtaining a right of way long ago for this, right? And this is supposed to be some sort of compromise for us to secure right of way for the city without necessarily having to pay for the right of way on that lot. And it's what we would refer to as kind of a deferral agreement. They're pretty common in subdivision phases where a subdivider can enter a deferral agreement on any improvements and go forward. Now, the distinction here that I think Austin is highlighting, and as I read the development code, this is 4.10.020, is this second lot isn't up for a final plat approval. At that point, when it is a final, as the code reads, no final plat shall be approved until the subdivider has submitted a subdivision improvement agreement, agreeing to construct the required improvements as shown within a 1-year time period at that point. So it's my understanding that this is a preliminary plat. Or is this is actually going to be the preliminary plat, Austin, or?
Yeah, so the final plat is actually this right here. this is what we're really adopting tonight.
The one that's up
So,
on the
so
screen right now.
under the code,
Lot 1.
Lot 1.
So the final plat's not the entire parcel. So how
Not
do you
the en-
submit a preliminary plat for an entire parcel, but also a final plat for part of that entire parcel?
So they're submitting a final plat for phase 1 or plat A,
Okay.
which is just one lot.
So I think looking out, right, it may be likely that the city will have to, pay for, curb and gutter along lot 1 there, right? Because this is the primary entrance to the cove, the cove and the Box Elder neighborhoods, right?
You mean Lot
And
2?
for lot 2, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean, yeah. And with the ridge coming in and potentially other developments to the southwest, right? I think there'd be some demand to have that more finished and walkable. So, I guess we just recognize that that's, a funding requirement on the city in the future, because I don't think we're gonna wait 10 or 20 years when there's, 100 new families in there.
So I'm standing and feeling what you're saying, but Troy and I were here when we went through this before, and I'm just wanting to have some kind of sense of security that we will get a right of way. That's because we went through it before and they didn't work with us on that one, on getting us a right of way. And now I want to know that if we do sign these things, that we will in some way, even if then we have to, as a city, fund the sidewalk and curb and gutter or whatever, but we will have a right of way.
Yeah.
Without any kind of take back or anything.
And I guess I'm a little bit, I was remembering differently than what Shane outlined. With the previous plan was that Grove Drive would be improved. And then when they did come back, my recollection, Shane, was that they came back because they were now going to do the what's it called?
Elk Ridge.
Elk Ridge Drive first, and then that would provide that
So
road was done later.
Mayor, we're talking two different things,
Yeah.
because according to the way it is, the road never had a right of way. The pavement is in
His yard.
Josh Shane's
Yeah.
property. And that's where everyone said, oh, really? We don't have a right of way here.
Yeah.
And so when we finally figured out that the Zolman property would be not able to work with the Pete Christensen area,
Yeah.
then is when we decided that we will take the funds from that subdivision and
Move it to
use
Elk
it for
Ridge.
the improvements for all that they would improve. And then
That's
have to
right.
deal with this other side in the future, at what point we can get a right of way. And that's why I'm saying we need a right of way.
Hmm.
And it's got to be secure that once we approve all this, that we're going to have a right of way. That's what we need. And we get it, we get it in every other development and land area that when they develop it. And if it comes in final plat, then okay. But at least we have to have some kind of secure feeling that we're going to get the right of way.
So Lon, are you prepared to make a motion that would bring that in? Do you feel like you have language?
Lon and Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Just to clarify, so the first bullet point in your sample motion here, the developer agreed to the terms of the development agreement as proposed by the city. So with the language that has been drafted by the city attorney, that would guarantee that we get the right of way that you're talking about. So
At
that
some
would
point
be
in the
set in
future.
stone, yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
no.
Not right now, but eventually, yes, there is a guarantee. There's no way that he could back out of that because there's this agreement.
Yeah.
See, the problem,
And what if he sells it? Is it in here? I'm trying to see if it's in here. If he sells
That's actually something that we discussed with Craig. That was a concern of mine as well, Lon. We will have a clause in there that this agreement will be passed on to their assigns and heirs of the property and all of that. And if the council would feel more comfortable with this, we can bring the full development agreement with all of the complete language for your review prior to approval.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a few details to work out before we're really ready to take it out of the.
Yeah, I would recommend that you table this till we have a full agreement.
Yeah.
For the council to review. We just slapped together some language there so that council could consider what's kind of being proposed in
Okay.
this agreement.
Okay,
But we can put provisions there. This would apply to any successor. And we can even record this agreement on the property or require that the agreement be recorded
that would be
against the
cool.
property.
So Austin, what is the width of the right of way here on Grove Drive?
So
41.
41 is the minimum, yeah, the most narrow point.
But on, sorry, that's on the,
That's on what's shown as lot 2 in your packet.
on the north-south
That
road,
would be
right?
on the road going north-south, so on that west side of the property there, the road going north-south.
Where the one, you know, that connects into Catherine Way, that one is 55 feet, 54?
At the intersection, I think it does widen back up to 54. Let's see, yeah, so 54 you can see here.
That's correct. Utah County's right of way width is 56 feet. And so the streets in the cove have a 56-foot right of way, except for this, the cove is only on the north side of the road, not the south. And so there was a little bit of a lack of the full right of way width there, but as planned, it would make the 54-foot right of way whole in the future.
What's that part that shows 37.7 feet up towards there? Is it more narrow in that spot? It's right where it next to 41, right
Hi,
there.
Mayor, this is David Peterson. I actually am representing the owner on this project. I can possibly address that briefly.
Okay, thank you.
So my understanding and working with Jed as I prepared this plan, Horrocks engineers actually prepared an alignment along that west side of Grove Drive. And that's what kind of has established how this has been, why the widths are the way they are is based on the alignment that they've prepared. And what that alignment does is it provides that setback from that historic home on the west side. And that's why you notice towards the south side, the southwest, there's a little bit of a jog. That's because they can take more right of way on the other side, and then it pushes more into Josh James's property. So you can see toward that south end there, that's where it's a little narrower, and then it pushes more into Josh James's property as it goes up to the north. Let me mention one other thing. I don't think there's any hesitation from the owner as far as signing an agreement as far as a willingness to dedicate Grove Drive on that west side. And so, and obviously we can't record the plat or do anything of that nature until we actually have that agreement in hand. And so I don't think they would be opposed to, if they have to sign that agreement and to get their plat recorded. And so if you want to add additional language or adjustments to the language, I just don't know if it's necessary. I need to come back to the meeting to discuss it again if we have to actually sign that agreement along with the recorded plat. So, but I'll let you do whatever you'd like, but I don't think he's hesitant in signing any agreement that would bind him to dedicate that right of way in the future.
Lon, are you ready to make a motion?
I thought we were gonna postpone. We're not gonna read it.
Well, we have to have a motion to table it if we're going to postpone it.
So we have a meeting on the 22nd, right?
Yes.
So and then Hiram, we could have it all ready for the 22nd. I don't know that we have to go into any other detail other than making sure that we, as a council, we feel comfortable about the agreement, right?
Mhm.
If I make a motion to table it till then.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we table final plat, Cherry Point subdivision plat A until next city council meeting, wherein Hiram will get the wording on the development agreement for the right of way on lot 2.
Okay, we have a motion to table by Lon. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Lon, seconded by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll see you next meeting. Thank you. All right. Are we on sign content? Yeah. All right. Austin, do you want to
Yeah, I'll go ahead and
introduce the
introduce
sign
this.
content?
So sign content, this is being proposed as ordinance 2021-10. This is looking to amend our sign ordinance in particular with relation to content in a sign. So we are allowed to regulate signs based on the time, place, and type of the sign. However, we're not allowed to regulate based on content. And so this ordinance here is an effort to update our code so that it's more accurate and more compliant with what the state is requiring of us. What we've done here is we've pretty much emphasized a couple of things in the sign ordinance. So one is we've emphasized temporary signs versus permanent signs. So we've made it clearer what type of sign is permanent and what type of sign is a temporary sign. And each, depending on whether it's a permanent sign, so that would be something like a monument sign or affixed to the side of a building. Temporary sign might be something like an election sign or, you know, something of that nature, a banner that you'd see in front of a business promoting something, a promotion or something for them. Those would be examples of temporary signs. So we just tried to more clearly outline what type of signs they are. And depending on the type of sign, you know, that dictates what kind of regulations are in place on those. Also, we've the way signs are regulated is also based on zoning. So if it's in a residential zone versus a commercial zone, there's entirely different standards for the signs. And so we've just emphasized that on certain things, you know, such as like if you have a home occupation, which would be a business that you're running out of your home, you can't have the same type of sign that a business in the commercial zone could. And then finally, we've also revitalized or amended the section on political signs. So political signs, there was a discussion, I think it was by the last city, most of you probably weren't on the city council, but at that time, about allowing political signs in the right of way, in the right of way in front of a building. So like if I own in front of my home, I have a grass strip in front of on the next to the road, and I want to put a political sign in that mow strip there. The idea was that we would allow that would be permissible. It'd be the same as allowing putting a political sign in my front yard. So
The discussion on that though was that you had to get permission from the homeowner
correct.
to use the city's park strip in front of their
Yeah.
residence.
Yeah.
to
I
do it.
think that's what this says, right?
That was a big issue a few years back.
Yeah.
People were really in conflict over that. So,
Yeah, so we're trying to fix that. We've also added another part to this where we put a time frame on when political signs have to come down. So in the past, it's just kind of, you know, you leave them up there and they, you know, sometimes they just never come down. So the idea is let's put something in the ordinance so that there's a time frame when you need to take your signs down by.
here's a sensitive one. Does that include flags?
I don't believe that that applies to flags, but Hiram can correct me.
There's still
on that
flags
one.
flying from the last election. I'm just wondering if we can put an end to that.
We actually talked about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that did come up in planning as well.
stop the steal, and other political flags oriented to the last election. Just, let's move on.
Yeah. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what this is amending with our ordinance. Other than that, it's still the same ordinance. Really, those are the areas of focus that have changed.
I'll make a motion.
Please.
I'll make a motion that ordinance 2021-10 be approved as proposed.
Okay, motion by Jason Thielen. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Lon Lot. All in favor?
I have,
Oh, sorry, I moved it too quickly. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
so in the prohibition section, can you look down there on, that's 32560.5. It refers to DCA 32590, which I don't think exists.
We're talking then.
Go down to 0.5.
And, yeah,
0.5,
5.
325.
Yeah,
90.
and I can't find that section. I don't know if it's a typo or if it was eliminated,
So yeah, that might
or
have
is it just
been,
not?
that might have been eliminated when we went to, let's see, we'll find out here in a second. Because we did, I think it's, is it referring to electronic?
Electronic.
Okay,
message
so it is in
displays?
there, just not in the,
So this is the section that it would be referring to in our code. You have on the screen here.
okay. And then the other thing, this addresses the temporary signs for other periods. 3 periods of 14 days per year. Does council feel like that's still necessary, excessive?
So this would be like a promotion, like
Yeah,
I want to do a discount.
does
at
a
my
business need 3 2-week periods a year to put out signs on Main Street?
So is that related to like those flat, tall, flag kind of
Yeah.
promotional signs?
So
Sometimes.
yeah, I mean, you've
Posters and-
seen the massage place, or you've seen Alpine Fitness, or these are some
Yeah.
examples that I'm using here that you've seen these banner type signs. And so the way that ordinance currently stands, they have 3 periods per year, and each period lasts up to 14 days, where they can advertise, so let's say a Christmas promotion or a Mother's Day massage or something, you know, so.
I like how that supports the business community, but it
Well-
may not be what some people want.
Yeah, I like it though, to the degree that we can at least enforce something and say, okay, we've seen it up 14 days. You're done, type of thing, versus not having a clause in there and not being able to say it's just too long.
Yeah.
Either we say no at all, which I don't know that it would be appropriate, or we give a time limit. It's my thoughts on that.
Okay.
I was just wondering if people felt like 3 was too many in a year, but versus say 2, I don't know. Because how many promotions do you have a year, you know? But
Yeah.
they seem just like roadside advertising, you know, but sometimes.
We've given more consideration to that in certain times when the economy is struggling, or
Yeah.
like during COVID, to let people know that there are still businesses open.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, now that you mentioned that, during COVID, we did kind of put a moratorium on that, and we allowed them to have their
Right.
signs up longer than we normally would.
And we issued a letter to the business people, letting them know that they were free to display their signs for that time. But I don't know if did we permanently wrap that up? Did we, I'm trying to remember the language of the letter. If it had I don't think it had an end date.
I don't know if we ever formally. put
So we
an end
probably
to
ought to wrap
yeah.
that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So just one quick last point. I don't think it's pertinent here, but in the business commercial zone, we regulate all sorts of things about the design of the building. But the monument sign, I don't know if we regulate that, at the size of it and the placement. But there's like a new one and it's basically the quality of a for sale sign, right? It's just a, couple wood
Oh.
posts and,
so you're saying we need minimum standard
yeah,
requirements?
because it doesn't, right? Anyway, I just, that seems strange, right? When you have all these beautiful buildings and then you have, it's basically a real estate sign as a permanent structure.
Yeah.
It detracts from the zone.
Yep.
So.
So would you like to see that addressed in a future amendment to the policy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's something in the historic gateway district or the business commercial. Yeah, maybe it's something under monument signs.
So maybe that's something, Shane, that we could ask the planning commission to start working on, is a minimum standard for signage in the commercial district.
Okay.
And maybe there's a consistent style the city wants to drive on.
And with my motion, Greg brings up a good point with the council, like would be in favor of moving it from 3 periods to 2 periods. I mean, other than that, that's the
14
only
days.
change I think that.
Yeah, that's all I said, yeah.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay, so I amend my motion that we're gonna approve it as proposed, making the one change on item D, other periods. So 3.25.140.1D, other periods, to say temporary signs shall be permitted for up to 2 periods of 14 days per calendar year.
Okay. And
Oh, I
Lon,
second
you
that.
seconded
Yeah,
it, right? You're
I
good with
agree.
that? Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion, which was also seconded by Lon. Any further comment or questions?
Just one real quick then. We'll just have to listen to the business district and see if they're really concerned about that in the future. I don't know that we'll hear anything about it, but
Yeah, we can always come back to it, and we also have access to emergency provisions, so to speak. That if we do have extenuating
I-
circumstances.
good with that.
Okay. Let's take a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Can I ask a question, Mayor? Is there any chance we could table G and H and move on to staff reports?
If you want to make that motion.
I just don't know if if there's anything significant that has to be done on that.
Sorry. I
It
lost
could
my-
be a real quick motion by me if
Okay,
you want.
let's-
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2021-12 location of retaining walls.
Now that's
As
efficient
proposed.
government right there. Do we have
I'll
a second to that
second.
motion? Okay, motion by Lon Lot. Actually, let's pause for a moment. We do have a motion by Lon Lot, seconded by Greg Gordon. Austin, do you want to just introduce the topics for the public record?
Yeah.
And then we can take. the
Yeah,
vote.
so this is dealing with retaining walls. Specifically, what we're talking about is the location of retaining walls. And it has to do with putting a retaining wall in a public utility easement. And so
Right,
what we're doing is we're just saying, if you're gonna put a retaining wall in a public utility easement, you need to get approval to do that.
written approval.
Written approval from the
From-
owners of that.
And
utility.
present that to the city.
Correct.
Okay, good. And we've talked about this, so it's an easy one to get through. Do we have any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right,
So
last
did I make a
item.
motion to table G, item G on the list?
Okay. Do we have a second to
I'll
that motion? Have a motion by Jason, seconded by Greg Gordon. Any questions on the motion to table? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Let's go to staff reports. We're moving along now, cooking with gas. Austin, do you have anything for us?
Just really quick, June 22nd, we will be discussing the general plan, specifically parks, and that includes Lambert Park. So just be prepared for a discussion on that.
Yeah, that'll be a good meeting, a good discussion, since we have a special meeting next week regarding one of our parks. Okay, anything
That's all
else,
I have.
Austin? Thank you. I'm sorry. Assistant Chief.
Really nothing. We do have a crew deployed down on the Benyon Creek fire. The phone call I stepped out and took was them kind of my nightly report.
Okay.
They are looking at another fire that's about 15 miles away. Sent me a picture that's picked up, and they're already moving crews from one fire to the next. So they're kind of expecting that they won't be back.
So did you say the Benyon fire?
Yeah, Benyon Creek, it's out
Benyon
by Schofield on the road from Highway 6 to Schofield,
Wow. And how close to that is the other fire?
10, 15 miles.
And of course, we've got a nice plume of smoke over East Canyon right now too. So
Right.
the state's on fire. It's gonna
Right,
get
and we
worse.
have the one down in Cedar, that's the biggest one in the state. So
Gosh.
it is, we're in fire
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, we are. And on that note, I'm going to make a special request for our police to enforce the no fireworks restrictions vigorously to make sure that we're really staying on top of it, because it's just a matter of time.
Can we do a parliament on that? Send out
Yeah,
a deal
that's a really good
to
idea.
just say, hey,
A what?
there is a parliament, message to all the citizens. That
Shane?
says, hey, fireworks are banned this year.
Yeah, let's,
And, yeah, fires.
and I think it's worth doing more than once, just really, let's really pound that message home. Shane, can we
need
get
to
that
start
done?
right now?
Yeah, and the system we use now
Thanks.
instead of Parlin is Everbridge, but it's the same concept, and the message will go to everyone that we have either a cell phone, a home phone. If they don't pick up, it leaves a message or an email. So if we have their information, they'll get it. So what I'm saying is 100% of the residents will not receive it because of one reason or another. Don't have an answering machine. We don't have a cell phone, to get a text, whatever. So, but yeah, we'll get a good percentage of the city doing that.
Well, between that message and Shane and I had a conversation yesterday about producing some large, very bold signs that will cover every entrance to the city and every piece of public property in the city to advertise zero tolerance for fireworks. And so are those signs in production yet, Shane?
We're working on that, yes. And I hope by the first of the week that we'll actually have the signs.
Yeah. So
that we can hang up. So
it'll be pretty tough to miss that message between the Parliament sign message and the signage.
And a question for interim deputy chief Patton. So obviously we've got people outside, but I mean, the biggest fear is something's gonna happen up here, so we don't wanna not have something this year. So what are you doing to make sure that we are trained and have everything we can for if something hits up here on the mountain?
So first off, and I was gonna say this, and just in case you get questions, see us on the news, see us on the Facebook, whatever. We supplemented seasonal people with our engine boss, and we were staffing ahead of time predicting that he would be gone. So we are staffed. We have people in the Alpine station as well as the Highland station. It's just a lot of equipment maintenance, making sure that everybody's familiar, making sure our pumps run, the trucks are good to go. We do training all year, but right now our focus is wildland. The guys have been out turning hydrants in Alpine, and with the message of, find all your accesses, look for your target zones, your hazards, the cove. Everybody's been up to the cove, and the new whatever they're called on Moyle on the dirt road, that we can get through those.
The bollards.
Yeah, the bollards. But yeah, that's what we, we anticipate that we're gonna have stuff happen. Of course, the problem is that everybody, so the idea is, Alpine stay in Alpine. They're not coming to Highland as much. If we do need to have our crews get together for training, we are up here just due to the threat especially the cove and up
So
around
the
the hills.
brush trucks, are they here?
plus
Are
out.
the brush trucks all at this one, or are they at both locations?
So we do have a brush truck in Highland, but we have two here.
Okay.
And then the tender is also here, the big water tank truck. So, and we may even, and especially like over the 4th, we'll actually do a little bit more staff up here so that we can run 2 trucks at the same time.
That's the,
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a fire question.
Ed.
Would the council permit me just to ask a question?
Yeah, really quick, so we're gonna try to get
I
through
know,
staff
I know,
reports.
just Right.
Ed Bush, 1463 Box Elder Drive, right? Last year, we were able to get the National Forest Service to put a ban on shooting across the eastern part of the city. This year is even a worse drought than we saw. Is there any possibility that we can get that again?
I can address that.
Thank you.
If you'll recall, when I announced that, it was because of federal law, this goes above the Forest Service to the legislative body federally. That was a one-time 30-day allowance. Their hands are tied. This is what they're telling me. And it's been confirmed by Representative Curtis. That's a one-time shot, so to speak, at doing that. And then it's open mandatorily. And so I had a conversation with John Curtis 2 weeks ago about it and expressed my frustration that something hasn't been done to protect cities like us, because we're not alone. He says he's working on it, and I believe him. He's trying to represent us, but it's a very difficult, and it requires an act of Congress. So.
but my
Okay.
question on that is, I wonder if it'd be beneficial. If you'd be willing, our interim chief Patton, if he could just create a letter. So, I mean, a letter that simply
point.
says this, if you were shooting in this area, it's irresponsible due to the extreme fire danger. Signed, Chief Patton. I just think if we stick that in those 2 or 3 spots, stick it up on, I think it would help for those people who don't think through the risk attached with shooting up there right now. Thoughts?
I can do that.
Mull that over.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, not binding, but it's certainly, put that in the locations, especially where people are leaving, out of South Lambert parking lot and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Absolutely, we can put something.
that would be terrific.
Okay.
I commented in part of my mayor's message this month about shooting up there. It makes no sense. Okay, thank you, Ed. Austin, you had nothing else, right? You
No,
finished?
nothing else from me.
Okay. Hiram?
Nothing from me.
Okay, terrific. Bonnie? Want to run through the list?
Yes,
Awesome.
I have 3 things.
Okay,
So my first one is, I just want to suggest that maybe we send something to church leaders about the fire ban and firework ban, and maybe have them read something over the pulpit. That's
Yeah.
just a suggestion. I think you might get more action that way.
yes. Thank
And
you.
then the Lone Peak Public Safety District meeting is canceled for tomorrow.
Saw that.
And then, do you want me
Did you
to?
hear the sigh of disappointment?
And then I'm gonna run through the 2020 municipal election candidate list. For mayor, Marissa Sherman, Murray B. Spence, Gary Cooper, Carla Merrill. For the 2-year term for city council, Ethan Allen, Jessica Schmuen. And for the 4-year term, Ed Bush, April Cooper, Kelly B. Law, and Jason Thielen.
So no primary except for mayor, right?
Just mayor. And they can pull out of that, but I need it in writing by Friday, this Friday, by
Okay.
5 p.m.
Okay, in order to
In order to
keep us
take,
from having to do
Yes.
a ballot. Okay, good. All right, thank you. Shane, do you have anything?
The only thing I have on my list is just how the council would like us to address the pickleball courts.
I think it's worth, this is my suggestion, council, feel free to override me, but I feel like it is worth another, just at least a meeting to allow public discussion. And that's not necessarily to mean that we have to have a lot of public comment, because I think we've heard quite a bit already. But maybe something to discuss issues, specific issues as it relates to the courts, lighting, for example. But what do you think?
I think it's a good point. We run a risk of, pulling in Burgess and Creekside neighborhoods and Lambert Park and pulling it all into a multi-neighborhood battle. And when you talk about proximity, I mean, we can easily get 200 families from Burgess Park in here and talking about their concerns with it, expanding or removing or keeping or whatever. So,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you feel like you want to have a discussion, or would you rather push forward and do the things that we've planned? Just how you feel?
I think there's a few things that could have them be heard, like, for example, the lighting. I think we could have a discussion around that. I don't know if the lighting is mandatory at this point. I also think that there's very sensitive to the fact that the soccer fields are used by, a lot of people outside of the community. Is there a way that we can not have those courts turn into a tournament court where it's promoted? Is there a way to control that? But it's not used for competitive or tournaments or for any league
That makes
outside
sense.
of Alpine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think discussions like that would help the neighborhood feel like they're represented.
I think that's a good point. Maybe it relates to our whole approach around recreation in the city, right? I mean, it might apply somewhat to baseball and some of the other sports in town, right?
Yeah.
To which leagues and how they're doing, because we see so often, right? The schedulers, they'll put you on a team out in Saratoga Springs, right?
Yeah.
And you find out there's a bunch of kids in the neighborhood that wanted to practice locally, and a little push there that we might do a little better.
Right.
So I don't know if we need to have a public time up with that, or if we have enough information that we've collected that we could talk as a council and dial in.
You mean make it
Those
part of the meeting, but
details.
not necessarily a public
Right.
hearing or something that would draw a lot of public comment. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that, with putting it on the agenda for a meeting for council discussion only.
Well, I don't know if that'll do what the neighbors wanting, though.
Yeah.
The neighbors want to express themselves.
Yeah, and I guess, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Lon, because there is a value in that and people feeling like they've been heard. But we've also had now 2 meetings where there's been quite a bit of feedback and a lot of emails. So I guess I'm not saying we shouldn't have it, but it feels like the opinions have been pretty well represented. And it's like a lot of issues that we hear, right? We've heard the same thing said enough that we don't need to hear it 16 more times. I realize that may sound a little bit unfair that one person or 2 people didn't get to express themselves, but there may be circumstances that allow us to have the information we need and still have an educated discussion.
So,
Yeah.
Shane, what's the status on pickleball court guys? I know that they're out a year. Were we in the schedule for this one, or are we a year out?
So we've talked to 2 pickleball court contractors. Both of them said the same thing, that we could probably get concrete in this year, but it would be next to impossible to get surfacing because of the temperatures required to cure that surface.
Because it would be in September or October that they put the concrete in, and we
were able to get concrete. Yeah. So where we were at is we had Jed had just finished up the bid package for the pickleball courts, everything but the lighting. He was working with the contractor or the supplier on that. And then these issues came up a meeting or 2 ago. And so we've just been in a little bit of a holding pattern. So we just need some direction on what you would like from us and how you would like us to approach that, so.
Well, this may be your point, Lon, that, we stay on that schedule. We keep things as they are, but we have the discussion in the meantime, and if anything changes, we can always cancel and let somebody else have that scheduled delivery.
Yeah, I think, so my take on this is we're not pushed up against the wall on the construction of it. We do have some time then to have a few more meetings and hear a few things, a very controlled situation. We have now received several emails from different parts of the city and different pickleball enthusiasts and tennis enthusiasts saying, no, you cannot take our tennis court,
right,
and convert them, and so on and so forth. It'd be good, somewhat as I mentioned in the beginning, that we have everyone hear what everyone's concerned about, and show everyone how difficult a decision this is to finally come up with a place to put something that doesn't hurt someone's feelings somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
and there's, within this neighborhood that we're talking about, there are some people who've already expressed to me that they support the pickleball courts.
Yeah.
They would like to have them, and they don't want to have the lighting. They may not want, one or two elements of it, but they're glad that we're coming to their corner with.
So if we hear things like helicopters or jake breaks, can we address some of those kind of things, or lighting and lights, right? Or traffic and noise, or parking and redlining part of Healy Boulevard there on that one side and push them into the parking lot. Those kind of things, at least start talking about that, and then we have a little time, I think.
I agree.
And I think one challenge is we get a certain faction that'll get organized and get here, right? And that's who we hear from. We don't get the other people that say we need a court, or the tennis people or whatever, right?
Well,
or vice versa.
And this is an example, the people who are in favor of it are being kind of quiet because they don't want to cause problems in their neighborhood, but they're there, and they may not be represented as well as those who are willing to be vocal about it. So, there are several things to consider, and the one thing that always gets to me is I've never been intentionally non-transparent, but like I said, we trip along the way, and we don't think we're showing a lack of transparency, but
So how about taking a practice run on this and saying, okay, we're gonna send a flyer out to the Burgess Park people, flyer out to the Creekside people, and a flyer out to the Healy Park people. And see who comes, and then when they come in and say, we weren't notified, we can say, we did everything we could.
Did everything we could. Yeah. So Shane, I think your answer is, I think we're gonna have we need to have it as a topic of discussion on another meeting. But let's keep the schedule that we have, just so in case we do arrive at that decision, we want to press forward.
And I just want to say one thing to Shane. I mean, I read it, I print out every one of these things, but I also map where they actually are when they send the thing in. And it's surprising how it's mostly Stonehenge and some people who don't back up. But the concern I have is if they send out flyers, the Stonehenge people send out flyers to the neighborhood, you're going to get only one side of the story because it's their message. But to the degree that you send out a thing about the conservation easement, and then all of a sudden we have 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever number of people emailing in that they support that. Right now, no one knows about the pickleball court stuff for the most part, outside of people right around that neighborhood that have received this flyer. So it's not really fair to try to make a judgment off of.
Well, and my thinking is why not rely on the process we have in place, which is notification through our public website, and have people be accountable for going to our city communication line, because you can't one-off and give someone a flyer, because the next time they're not going to feel like they were notified. So the way we're established as a city is you go to our website, you look at what's on the agenda. And it's funny because in my mind, it was easier. This was the first time we had online YouTube live feed. It couldn't have been more simple to see what's going on in the city than this year. I felt like it was so much easier for the general public. So it didn't seem like there was not transparency. This was
Yeah.
the most transparent year for city
Because it was
council
out there.
meetings in Alpine that we've ever had.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
and they're all video recorded, right?
They're all
Yeah.
recorded, and if you're bored, go to YouTube.
I'm not sure I remember that board. Okay. All right, let's move forward then. And let's discuss it one more time in an upcoming meeting. It will be a controlled environment. And it's always hard to maintain. But I think we can do it. Anything else, Shane?
No, I think that's it
Okay.
for now.
Okay, thank you. Lon, did you have anything?
Just one thing, back to the pickleball courts, nets at Burgess Park are wind things. I have one person that says he personally went and bought some things and put them up because the wind screens were blown down and torn and stuff. Can we get a budget, a line item, I guess, in the budget for some of those things, or do we have a line item to replace some of those worn and destroyed athletic?
We have funds
things
for our parking maintenance, but
Yeah,
I don't know if it needs a line
Two-
item.
two things on that. One, there is a resident down there that's very heavily involved with pickleball, and he sent me an email and said, hey, I can get, because of my position or whatever, I can get a discount on some of these things. So I said, yes, let's get together. If the nets need to be replaced, we can work to do that for sure. As far as the windscreen, that is something that the city never put up. Somebody else did.
Okay.
I think it was during Alpine days, and maybe it's something that's necessary and something we need to look at and plan for, replacing and everything. But that was not a city purchase. Somebody else did that without even asking us. So,
Okay, that's good to know.
and in fact, with that, when I found out about it, we had went down to the Ivory facility down there, kind of by Thanksgiving Point. They get a lot of wind down there. Their screens actually have, like, you'll see the vinyl signs that have the kind of a half circle cut in them, so that when the wind blows, the wind will go through. They said it's absolutely necessary, and these windscreens that whoever put up at Burgess, they don't have those, and so it needs to be probably revisited and done right, because those fences really aren't made for that kind of a wind load that's put on it with the kind of screens they put up. So,
Well, that's good to know that someone else did it. Now we need to maybe I'll tell them that we should have the appropriate screen up.
yeah.
That's all. I guess the mayor's stepped out for a minute. Jessica, do you
I
have
don't have
anything?
anything.
Greg?
Shane, do we know the parade route for Alpine Days this year? Is it planning to go down Main Street there?
So I know that Cami has looked at having it start at the church there at North Main and come down Main Street, so a different route than it's been in the past. And I'm trying to get a meeting set up for next week with Cami and hopefully the mayor, and the mayor would like a council member there to just kind of get an update on Alpine Days, see where there are needs, and discuss some of those details in that meeting.
Yeah, that's great. I just think, if it's like, if there's some big problem, it's gonna seem like council didn't do their job, right? And so, but I think looking at that, we should look at traffic flow, the total distance for that to go, the number of parking spots on the roads that can reach that, and then lastly, the number of seating and grass area on whatever route we choose, right? I mean, great to look at different options and to do things differently, but just assuming people can find a place to sit and park and so on.
That's one reason why going around Creekside makes a lot of sense, because there's two long stretches of exposed grass there.
Yeah. And then with the candidate filings, I wonder if we should look at a filing fee. I think we're rare in that we don't have one, right? But when I came in to file, Charmaine said, "Are you a college student? Putting this on your resume." And but you know, it potentially someone could force this into a primary when they just wanted to get it on the resume, so to speak, right? So something to ensure they're a little more serious.
Right.
So an idea.
Worth considering in a future meeting for sure.
Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Jason?
And maybe along those points, I think it's a really good point, but talk about Bonnie a little bit. We have 4 people running for mayor.
Yeah.
It might be nice just to send out a thing that says, you know, the 11th is if you want to take your name off, if you want to stay on, just know this is the time commitment. Because sometimes people put their name in, but they don't know that there is a significant time commitment as a mayor. And so, you know, it might be nice just to remind them. I don't think we're going to drop below the primary, but and we want people to run who want to run.
We're serious about
To
it.
your point, you know, you have to be serious about the commitment once you become mayor.
Yeah. True. Okay. Is that all you had,
Yeah, thank
Jason?
you.
I have a couple of quick items to cover. I'll get through them really quickly. One is just a question, and I don't have to have the answer now, but somebody mentioned the Parade of Homes earlier. Do we get any piece of the revenue from those? Because there are some in Alpine. Every year we get people crowding streets. There's undoubtedly some wear and tear services we have to provide, things like that. And they bring in a lot of money. So I think we need to look at that as a revenue source for us, if they're gonna bring that kind of traffic impact in. You know, there are people profiting from it. And so we're bearing the burden.
I think last year we were like, what, 25, and a little bit in nearby Highland, we were about maybe a quarter of the parade. I think we're about a fifth of the whole parade, but it's the whole county, right?
Yeah.
And that's every year. But you know, it's like the parking has to be controlled a little bit, because these neighborhoods aren't made for, you know, an event like this.
There was one on your old street, you know, what is that? That's Quail Hollow Lane. A few years ago, and the whole street was just packed for 2 weeks. You know, it was just hard to get around. So I think we ought to look at that as a possible fee situation per home that is on display. Anyway, just a thought. I mentioned in the news line and through emails that we've exchanged in the last week that there will be a survey for the meeting that we're having next week. Sorry, I don't have that yet, but I'm promised that it will be here tomorrow. And if any of you have feedback or input on specific questions you'd like to ask on that survey, please email them to me. And I'd be happy to try to incorporate them into it. And I said in the previous email that I didn't want to get locked into a long process of trying to create the survey. And that wasn't because I don't care what people want to ask or what people have to say. It's just that I want to condense the process as much as we can, because we'll have plenty of opportunity to refine the survey down the road and ask it again, just and continue to get feedback. But I know, Lon, you had some questions that you want to make sure were considered. So let's make sure that happens. And hopefully we'll have something by tomorrow or Thursday. Let's see. Austin, can I ask you a favor? In the next meeting, can we please be prepared to have that timer the way we used to have it, so that it shows the time expiring?
So do you want both? Because we have it on the screens, but we also have it on there.
I know it's on the screen, but I like having it there because it's hard to miss. It's easy if you're speaking to get a tunnel vision or a lack of peripheral vision that allows you to see what's on your screen right in front of you, because it's not really standing out that much.
I don't think most people look at the screen when they're up at the podium.
I agree. They're looking at us.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll just use the old one instead of the new thing.
Yeah, we've been, in the past when we used it, I felt like it was fairly effective because everybody could see the time was up.
It does make a beep too, I think, when your time's up, so.
Maybe
the new one doesn't do that.
Maybe honk.
We could get a big air horn that I could honk at the people.
Beautiful.
You can't see the numbers in that Alpine City logo. They're
Yeah.
all the same color.
Yeah.
You had red or something maybe. but
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Yeah, it's easier to control the meeting a little better, like in that, a couple of times tonight, it got a little long and we were
Each
well
one
beyond.
went over their time tonight.
Yeah. Does council have strong feelings one way or the other? We did this a couple of years ago, and I felt like it actually was kind of effective to have goats grazing and creating fire breaks. I've got a message from the goat guy today, and he said that he is available. And it was a kind of an unobtrusive way to create fire breaks, and it seemed to be pretty effective. Does anybody have a strong opinion about it, one way or the other?
I didn't hear.
I've always thought they're very effective, right? It's kind of a natural way to
Yeah.
clear it out.
Yeah.
So I've seen it done many times and watched them. It's amazing.
There are a lot of cities who have contracts, annual contracts with them because they have been proven to be effective. So and they
Where
fertilize at the
again
same
did we
time.
do it last year?
We did it 2 years ago up along the Spring Down Trail on Lambert, which was kind of our the northern border of Lambert Park. And I was amazed because within a couple of days, first of all, the goats were climbing on every rock to reach the leaves of the trees. So they groomed everything up to about 4 feet. And then they did something to keep them down in the grass to eliminate the cheatgrass, which is really the fire hazard. I like the idea, but if anybody's opposed to it, I'd like to hear that opinion. And if you want to cover it in another way, just send me an email or give me a call. That's great, but I'd like to kind of move in that direction. If we're,
I'd like to hear the costs again.
yeah, that's a good point. They're not cheap. I mean, they're not as cheap as you feel like it should be.
You'd think it should be free.
Yeah, because we're feeding the goats. But they're hauling them and managing them. There's usually somebody on staff 24/7. Okay, and then that's it. That's all I had. So we'll have a motion to adjourn,
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
seconded by,
I'll second.
we have a motion to adjourn, second by Lon, seconded by Greg. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? So what my intent was to have a survey online so that people leading up to the meeting can fill out the survey and we'd have some results that also track it with this. If we have questions, we can say, where are people leaning, during our meeting? Because a big part of